Hey guys, what is up? AwesomeTheSauce here. Hope you guys are having a great day and welcome to a video where we talk about one of the most controversial things that King's House ever released. We're going to be talking today about the Troll Spelmon. Now, the Troll Spelmon has a gigantic history in Wizard101. This is probably the spell that started the whole, issue that the community has ever had with Spelmons in general. But they recently updated this, so I wanted to compare it to what it is now to like what it was a few weeks ago. It's a complex video, so make sure you leave your opinions in the comments after hearing mine. But without further ado, let's get right into it. So why was this spell an issue a few weeks ago? Let's start there, right? It basically was a spell that used fairy very, very excessively, and it also used sprite. And it's a 2-pip spell, right? So any school, not just myth, but any school really could just run a myth mastery, provisional myth talisman. And if you were on any school that was somewhat defensive, that had decent resist, what you could do is just use this every time you had a debuff that was universal, right? So if you had a weakness, if you had a shield that you were dealing with, basically the meta was break that shield, break that weakness, summon a minion, and now you're ready to hit and you have a minion out that can heal you. If that sounds broken, it is. It was simply not a thing where you could just, want hit a minion and call it a day, because you would leave yourself very, very open to a shot, right? Let's say an ice had an aura out or an ice blade up and you weakness, and then they do this. If you were to want hit this minion, you would get a bombed, and it would be a buff to bomb, and you can't really afford that in a matchup against an ice. So you would have to leave this minion alive, and you would have to watch as it ferried your opponent time and time again. It would be very ridiculous. I think it got out of control. So this is definitely something that needed to be changed. So now let's talk about what it is right now, right? Instead of the fairy spamming, sprite spamming monstrosity that it was, did they make this a balanced card? So now it's much more of a myth minion, and it honestly, it makes sense that it's a myth minion. I'll be honest. It's a myth. It literally says myth minion on it, so I don't know why I was using life spells to begin with. And it also just does stuff that a myth will find very helpful, right? It does very simple moves like myth trap, which, I mean, that's kind of helpful. It also does do a spirit trap, which I don't even have trained on this wizard, but it's kind of nice. It does still have a heal, but it's the myth heal, Grendel's Amends, which does less than a satyr, and it's 5 pips, so it's much more myth-oriented when it comes to its healing powers, because it needs 5 pips in order to do it. I don't think this whole Grendel's Amends from the troll is going to be a regular thing. Could be wrong on that. Don't think it's going to be a regular thing. What I believe are its most powerful abilities right now are Pierce. It can pierce, which I think is a little crazy, because let's say that, again, we're running into the same issue, right? Let's say that someone breaks a debuff and summons this minion. Sometimes you can't kill this minion without taking a gigantic hit, and you would need to shield. And the fact that it can pierce makes it so that you might have to do a certain type of shield that's not pierceable. So basically what that means, if someone who's not a myth is using like a troll minion, you can't really tower shield against it. You might have to just weakness again. You might have to brace. Not as bad as before, right? You still have some options, because you're not just gonna see a troll fairy spam, but it's a little bit iffy. And it can also do a yellow elf, which is basically like an elf, but it's myth and it's 4 pips. It basically breaks a shield and then detonates in overtime later. Not too crazy. And it can also go for, which is I think one of the weirder ones, it can go for a triple shield, but it's an astral shield, so it's a myth, ice, and death shield. Let's talk about the things I like about this minion. Let's talk about the things that I think are going to be problematic in this meta. One thing that I genuinely like is that you're actually rewarded for going up the spell writing tiers, right? Before, I don't know why this worked, but basically you would actually want to summon the first version of this, because before, the tier 2 summoned a like a weaker version of the minion than the tier 3s through 5. And what a lot of people were doing, they would just stick with this because it would have fewer spells, but it would still have fairy. So you might increase the odds that it fairy spams you. I don't know if that logic ever checked out. A lot of people said it did. So basically tier 2 is better than tier 5. That's no longer the case. Now tier 5 literally just, it summons the same minion with an extra pip, and the damage just goes up as you upgrade. So in my opinion, they fixed the spellman part of this. I don't think it's crazy if you have tier 5 or tier 2. Like, it's very, very similar either way. It's just you get an extra pip on the minion if you go a little bit further up. So compared to the previous troll minion that used to be, now that you can literally farm these, now that it's not behind a pack, I don't think it's actually pay to win. So I think it solved a lot of issues. It's actually a myth minion. It's not pay to win. These are all good things. The spellments make sense. Now let's talk about the actual balancing of the spell, right? I'm gonna be honest here. I do not think that a hit and minion card should ever be anything under 3 pips. That's just my opinion on this. As someone who PvPs a lot, I think this just creates a lot of tempo. And yes, it's not gonna be like, as I said, a lot of these spells are myth-based. Most schools are gonna be using this troll less. I don't think Ice should be using this as much. I don't think it actually benefits them a lot. Yes, the triple shield is kind of nice to set up a shield gambit, but you're using 2 pips, right? You might as well literally just set it up yourself for 0 pips with triple shields, right? And like, you're good. Like, you can just do these and then break the shield that your opponent has with it, or debuff or whatever, and then you're ready to set up a gambit. So I feel like a troll is actually kind of a liability now on most schools other than Myth. I will say this though, I think the fact that it can pierce is kind of a big deal for life, because that actually counters spirit shields. And the fact that it can spirit trap is still very, very good for life, because you can actually use that life trap, right? So there are certain schools that might actually still be able to use it other than Myth. That being said, I think it's definitely more of a Myth spell now. Now, is it OP for Myth? That I would have to say it is. I have to say that it is. I still think the pip cost does not really make sense for this. I think as long as you have like a reliquary or you happen to win Bubble War, the second you do this, it's basically out to stay, and it just gives you a lot of offense. What I will say, right? The fact that it doesn't vary every damn round makes it so that it's not both an offensive and defensive move. That's kind of what it was before, and it was ridiculous, right? You would literally just break a shield and have a heal source, which is just too much. You have offense and defense, essentially. It's crazy. So I am very thankful about this change. I don't think every school should be using this and just spamming it back and forth. What really was happening is someone would troll, and your counter was to troll minion that troll and summon your own troll, and whoever packed more of these would generally tend to win that matchup. It was getting a little nuts. Now, I think the key is when a Myth does use it, you might actually have to go on the offense as well. Doing things like shielding, whether it's a tower or a spirit shield, is going to make you run into issues, because the Myth can literally betrayal a spirit shield or Jin's defense if they carry that, or, you know, the minion could just trap and pierce and do all that. Like, it could get a little crazy. The good news is, the longer this is out, I do feel like it could start running into issues, right? If it can hit, it can literally clear those Myth traps. That could be a very serious issue. And obviously, there are still matchups where a troll minion might be bad for your pips, right? Like, obviously, if a death drains this minion, it could be very bad for you. There might be a meta where people start packing Elf, but with the Spelmon upgrade, and it literally is like a 2-pip AoE. It can literally, you can start running into issues where you start taking damage, and you aren't gaining pips on your opponent if they use it. I think some schools will struggle against it, but let's not forget what this is now. It's a Myth minion, and I feel like the more specific the issue is, the easier it is to address it. Now, a viable counter to troll minion might just be the Myth ward, because only Myth wizards are really going to be using this. I do think it's a good change. Do I like the spell as it is? No, I don't. I'll say this right now. I still don't understand basically the way this balances a 0-pip minion, but it can still Grendel's Amends. It can still pierce, which is extremely, extremely useful. It could set up whole gambits. It's so much tempo for free, even if it's just on a Myth. I still don't really get where they're coming from. What I will say is, the fact that it's not on other schools might make this a slightly better meta for a lot of people. Time will tell. I think it is a little bit too early to really know, because, you know, maybe this won't be as good as it used to be. But I will say this, I think it is a definite improvement from the very first version that everyone found a problem. And I think it is an improvement from the fairy spamming menace that we had like a week ago. Let me know what you guys think of the new troll minion in the comments below. Have you seen matches where you think I'm wrong? Do you think other schools can literally spam this and benefit a lot? Or do you think that it's just a really Myth heavy, really broken spell? Or do you think it's not broken? Let me know in the comment. As always, drop a like if you enjoyed. Leave a sub if you're new. Y'all, we just hit 70K. We're moving on to 75. That's gonna be crazy, so drop a sub. Somebody has not told you're awesome today. They doing something. I'll see y'all soon. Stay awesome, y'all. And yeah.